If you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
My McCready's looking particularly relaxed tonight. I'd just like to point that out. We noticed we haven't been getting as much attention from the old music television as we used to, so we got a fashion consultant, and this is the first thing they tried. We paid a lot of money. They came in and they're working with our image a bit, and this is the first thing they did. They told Mike to wear sandals. But they got duct tape on them. See, that's what kind of makes them edgy, you see. That's what the market is these days. Relaxed but edgy. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen. Fucking Cameron in the truck. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
everybody now. Welcome to Live on Four Legs, the definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. This week, we are in Nashville, and then we're going to be heading to Raleigh at the end of the week. And since we already covered Nashville, we can get into that a little bit later. If you're following on the main platform feed, you're like, what do you mean we covered Nashville? We did. It happens to be on Patreon. It's the Third Man Record Show. We can talk a little bit more about it later, but that means this episode is going to cover all things Raleigh and get you prepared for the Raleigh shows, especially for those of you going to night 2, like myself. Be very excited about that, and hopefully that'll be a great show on a Tuesday night in between the Hurricanes and Capitals games. But the show that we're going to cover here is the last time that they were in Raleigh in 2003, believe it or not. So it's been 22 years, a very long time. It wasn't supposed to be that way. That's something that we'll get into. They were supposed to play there in 2016. I think a lot of people know what that story ended up being, and we'll revisit that in a little bit. But this is a 2003 Riot Act era show. My favorite tour year. I love talking about it. There's a lot of good stuff for Javi to talk about too when it comes to what they were doing sonically, and there's some great performances at this show. But also, hey, we're still in the middle of the tour. We recorded this after Jazz Fest, so we're pretty close to being up to date, even though the night before that this comes out was the first Nashville show. We obviously won't have anything from there, or you wouldn't be hearing Javi right now. But again, there are other ways to listen to that coverage that we'll absolutely get into later. So why don't we just get into all the stuff that I said would be for later now. Randy Sobel over here. The Guru, Javier Hervas over there.
Randy, welcome back. Sort of. After all the travels, I feel that I haven't seen you in or heard you in a couple of weeks.
I know. I was thinking the same thing because when we did the Atlanta episode that aired last week, it was a rush episode essentially. We recorded 4 things in a row. and it was kind of my like vacation off time to edit it together to get it ready for the episode last week. But yeah, we haven't actually recorded anything in 2 weeks. I'll say I've enjoyed the break. Because the grind can get to you sometimes, so I've enjoyed the break. But more than that, I've enjoyed following the shows and being at two of those shows. I think we're working with something here. We got something pretty good going on in the early onset of this tour. And you're very close to seeing a show in just a couple of days. So, what's your excitement level like for this?
That's a really good question. By the way, something that I wanted to say before we get into that, it's I don't know if people know, but here's Randy's the one that always does the heavy lifting. So public recognition to you, my friend, for always doing like the editing and all that stuff. Because even though, guys, that I record the Gear Garages, Randy's the one editing in the back. So I'm happy that you got a little bit of time off, enjoying your time off in Disney. I bet that there was not a lot of people there, I'm sure. But
I
no, I know.
only
Yeah.
needed I only needed to focus on one.
Good. That's good. And hopefully you didn't get sick, because I last time that I was in Disney, I got very, very sick. But yeah, as I was saying before, I guess I didn't know how excited I really was before this weekend. The winter got a little long to me, and I don't know. It was just, sure, if I can make it work, I'll make it work, and then trying to figure it out, vacation time and all that kind of stuff. But like, I'm ready. I'm definitely ready, especially like we were saying before as well. You feel and I feel that they only have scratched the surface for sets, and maybe Nashville is going to be a good opportunity just to pull out some other stuff. I mean, if I get what you guys know that I'm looking for, I'll be more than happy. But we'll see. We'll see. But I'm very excited. I'm not excited to drive like 9 hours or so. But yeah, I'm ready to see them this week. I'm well needed.
I'm hoping for Crown for you. I think it's a good possibility in venues that they like. They like to play songs that are little nods to the fans, and I hope that they're not going to think about saving this for Pittsburgh because yes, Chloe Crown is usually a final night of the tour song historically, but it doesn't have to be played in good venues with good sound, and maybe that's all you really need to do. But knowing what they did a few years back in 2022 and seeing that they had a lot of other options that I'm sure were open to them, and they said no, we want to go back to Nashville. I think that speaks volumes of how they feel about the place and what they want to bring to the table here. I mean, the first show there, it was the first one since 2003, which we'll talk about that same kind of layoff in just a second with Raleigh for sure. But they brought so many cool songs to the table that I didn't think would be possible. Like Go and Spin the Black Circle both in that show. Nothing Man opener, Black really early in the set. Smile was in that set. It was really, really well done, well curated for the venue that they were in. I think that's something that they can do again when looking forward to that. And somebody's probably listening right now and saying, oh, retrospect, we maybe got one or two of the shows after you listen to this. So let's see how right we are. I would like to see them dig a little bit more into the catalog and get some of those lesser played songs in there. And I think in Atlanta they did a pretty good job of finding some of those. Can't Keep especially was just one that I really didn't think would be opened with on this tour, but I'm happy they did it. And it bodes well for the future for that song that it's a possibility. I like those odds. So hopefully they have a good inkling on it again in Raleigh, and that could be that. But I think you'll get some good stuff. Yeah, I think you'll get some more dark matter stuff, and I think that even though Jazz Fest they didn't play a lot of it, they're still going to be pretty high on it. And we'll see what the direction here when it comes to playing all the albums, because it was different with the two Atlanta shows. They played a lot of the albums on night one and then really stuck to 90s stuff on night two. So I wonder if that's kind of in their mind as a way to structure things for the rest of the tour.
Right, it could be, and that's the beautiful thing about this band is you never know what you're gonna get. And I know that I've said this a lot of times before, but that's why we follow them whatever we got along. I mean, now there's more important reasons like all the friendships that we have built, and it's a really good opportunity just to go out there and see our friends, which I'm very excited to see a few people too in Nashville. But it's exciting. I'm excited. I'm ready. I'm ready for some live music too. I miss that. It's been a while.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm actually it's crazy. I'm going to more shows this summer, or I want to go to more shows this summer than I've been to in the last couple of years that weren't Pearl Jam shows. So I'm kind of excited for that. I am going to try to go see Gaslight Anthem in like a month or two. This coming week, I think I'm going to go see Amigo the Devil. If you've never heard of him before, look him up. He's fantastic, and he calls himself the murder folk genre, and it's just a really good time when you see this guy live. I've never seen him before, but I've seen clips, and his songs just work so well for the live stage. It's going to be a fascinating show. And then I think like Me First and the Gimme Gimmes are playing in Rochester, and I might go see them, even though they're not Me First and the Gimme Gimmes anymore. They're like Spike in the Gimme Gimmes, which is a dumb rebranding, but whatever. And then I got Primus and I got the Swell Season. So looking forward to this summer. I feel like this is more concerts than I definitely more concerts than I had last year. I only had like Primus and Jason Isbell last year, but I'm excited to get live music back into my repertoire because I really felt like it was missing. But going to the Hollywood shows, I think that those were my first concerts since the Fenway one last year, which is just kind of incredible to say that. And boy, did I not know how much I needed that. Just being able to be in the vicinity and having GA for night one was a tremendous experience because, I've never been one to camp out. You get there early enough and you can find a good spot. I feel like I was about 4 rows in back of the rail, which Mar was on the rail, so I was 4 heads behind Mar, and I was able to see everything really well. I was able to take good video, even though people might not have liked my singing. I don't care, and I never will. But it's a privilege, not a right, to see the live streams, guys. So just take it as it is. But it was good to be so close. I feel like I've forgotten almost when I see them and say you're way in the back and in seats or something like that. You almost kind of forget that they're real. And I know that might sound weird saying that, but when you're in the seats, it's like, okay, it's not much different than watching a movie in a sense. Like, yes, they are people and they're running around. I know this is going to sound weird, but when you're so close, you truly feel like you are a part of things and you actually like see reactions and you feel what they're doing out there. And there was nothing but positive vibes from night one. And night ones, we've talked about that before, where they are a crapshoot and sometimes the band is just trying to get their feet wet and trying to feel it out. And I didn't feel a lot of that. I don't think a lot of people down there felt a lot of that. I think they were ready to go, especially Mike. Seeing Mike early on Present Tense and Why Go, there were moments where he was just doing that pacing around the stage, that, animal that just broke free from the cage. He broke free from the 6-month cage of not playing on that stage, and it felt like he got possessed at times. I remember during Even Flow, he was doing the, getting the feedback off of the amps kind of bit, and seeing that up close was very cool. And yeah, the whole experience was just so much fun. And I'm thankful that I have GA with Lori for night two Raleigh, that I'll be able to kind of do that again. And I had a great time at night two. I think night two was the better show. I will say that. I think night one's experience in total was probably something I'll never forget, but the show for night two is phenomenal. I thought that the crowd was really good, and being in that place, only 7,000 people, whatever it is, the sight lines for the seats are really good because you don't have people standing in front of you. It's elevated in a way where nobody is blocking anybody's vision. And I thought that aspect was so cool. It kind of felt like you were in the front row the whole time. The crowd, I saw older people and I saw people that started the show sitting down that ended it standing up. And I thought at first, like, oh, well, maybe this is just going to be one of those crowds. But at the end of Dead Pioneers, like the crowd started clapping in our section. I'm like, okay, maybe we have something here. Maybe this is going to turn up. And they did. They were phenomenal. It was a good experience. And I think these shows kind of reignited energy and is making me even more excited for Raleigh, I think, because now you kind of know you're following along with the shows a little bit and you kind of know what they're doing. It's like, all right, well, they didn't do this, this, and this, and they haven't done such and such so far. So maybe something cool will come out of Raleigh, but remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. But I just wanted to share how much I truly enjoyed seeing people in Hollywood and spent a lot of time with Jason and, of course, Mar and Lori and Amy and Mike. And, big shout out to Mike yet again. He's going through some stuff right now and couldn't make the second Atlanta show, going to the hospital. So we're thinking about you, and we hope that everything's okay and you can get back on your feet in no time. He suffered basically a collapsed lung and just scary stuff.
He's gonna make it out okay, but we're gonna be thinking about you, Mike, and hopefully this is just a story in a few more weeks.
Just a roadblock. That's it. Nothing more than that. All right. Well, I think before we get into the set list, let's talk a little bit about Pearl Jam's history in Raleigh. It's not too deep. It goes back to 1992, where they played a Lollapalooza set. That information of that set list is not available to us. They were there in 1998 and played a set there in 1998. That was kind of around the time where they were playing like Pittsburgh and Birmingham and Atlanta, and a lot of really good shows happening around that time. I haven't dug into that show just yet, but I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. So maybe that's something for the future that we got to talk about. Of course, there's this one for today, but really the story that comes with Raleigh is about the 2016, what could have been in terms of when they booked that show. So for those that might not remember, I'll refresh your memory a little bit. So they were planning to go to Raleigh in 2016. I believe it was after Hampton, Virginia, or before Hampton, Virginia, in between Hampton and South Carolina. But the reason why they decided not to go, it was because of the laws about bathroom bans with transgendered people, and they wanted to stand behind that group. And Bruce Springsteen had canceled a show in North Carolina previous to that, and they also decided it was in the best interest to not allow that state their commerce and cancel that show. So, 9 years later, I don't think that bill is in effect anymore. I believe that it's been nixed. They do have a Democratic governor right now, so I guess they decided it was time to go back. But what I remember about that time specifically, it was just like it tore this fan base apart. And I wasn't really like community involved just yet, not anywhere close to how it is now, but not even like really surface level back then. It was just kind of one of those things where I'd see in groups and I'd see people comment and I'd see people react to stuff. And there was just so much turmoil about, shut up and play versus, stand up for your beliefs. And it's always been this thing where if there's ever a situation where the band feels like they do need to use their voice and stand up for something they believe, they're going to do it. And they've always done it. It's not just like a normal thing. It's not Pearl Jam really being woke. I hate that word. I hate that terminology. But for anybody that considers them that, I don't think it's that. I think that they just stand for human rights and they stand for people. It can be a hot button issue sometimes because there are people that feel a certain way about things and they don't care what an artist will have to say, whether it be politically, whether it be about, important issues, but they've always from day one felt like they've needed to be in the forefront of that. And I just kind of remember that this group was just split. I called it the Civil War, the Pearl Jam Civil War. And look, nothing's ever going to be perfect, especially now, but I think it's gotten better. I see a little bit less fighting between the sides here. I always try to stick to Pearl Jam as much as possible because that's what keeps us together instead of divides us apart. But it was tough to be a part of that community in that time. I don't know what you remember from it, but it was just, I saw a lot of things that I didn't really appreciate.
Yeah. I'm trying to put myself in that headspace too because there was so much buzz around the band. Because if I'm not mistaken, it was around the time, or it was like right after the show when they did verses, like straight
Yeah.
up. I understand the expectations are high and people want to get like their ticket value to see the band that they like. Or even if you are an occasional listener, that's okay too. I mean, everybody has that right, if I can say it that way. But I'm not okay with people saying, like, well, just shut up and play the songs. Because if you say something like this to a band like this one, you basically have not been paying attention for the last 34 years. And if they're going to stand against something that they think that is not okay, so be it. I mean, it's part of who they are, and that's why they became something a little bit more than a band, and that's why they're recognized for that too. So it's unfortunate, but there was a lot of bickering on forums and social media, and which it shouldn't be the case. Is something that is just, it should not be part of the argument here. Like, yes, it's something that it can put us together in one single room for 2.5 hours, but I mean, if they're going to stand up for what they believe, I'm all for it, and that's where I stand.
That was the conversation that I had with Mar on the reaction episodes. It's kind of a little bit of, what was going on then. And that's really months before Trump becomes president elect. So it's only like a small sign of things to come. But also, we think about what he's said on stage this year, and he hasn't said a whole lot. It has mostly been along that same line of like, let's come together. We have more things that unite us than divide us. And he hasn't said much more than that. We were kind of talking about it. It could be a thing that he doesn't want to have people come to the shows and feel like they can't have fun because of that. And I don't know why somebody would feel that way, that they couldn't have fun and enjoy themselves at a show due to some conversations. But I think that a lot of maturity has happened between then and now. And I'm wondering if he brings it up during these shows. I wonder what he's going to say. I'm sure he's going to be like, yeah, we miss you and we wish we could have been here sooner. I'm sure, but I want to see how he approaches it because it could come from a couple different angles here. But I think he's again going to be pretty unapologetic for how they went about things. So that's look. You can't be for freedom and then say that somebody in a position of, I wouldn't say power in their position, but in a position where people are paying attention to them, you can't say that they can't say anything, but you sitting there not having your own platform are allowed to say something. Like that to me kind of contradicts the whole thing. So if you can say something and I can say something, then we should all be able to say how we feel about things because that's really what freedom is. Freedom doesn't discriminate. So, with all that being said, we have a really good show. to talk about here from 2003. So let's just jump right in. And how about this? You want different openers, you want new things to talk about. Well, you don't get it at this show. You get the same opener that we seem to cover almost every episode because this is the most common opener that they have. Of course, need I say more? Release is the one from this one.
I see the world, feel the chill, which way to go, window sill, I see the world on a rocket horse of time. I see the words in the
This version felt really full, and it feels like the recording kind of captured the surroundings really well, and you got to hear how balanced this mix is. I want to know from your standpoint what the guitars were doing here, because it felt like there was a really good balance between Mike and Stone and sort of the sounds that were coming from that stage. But there's something cool that Mike does towards the end of the song that I noticed here. It's kind of like this spiraling sound effect, and it feels like you were able to hear it in little pieces of the song. But that's the thing that kind of poked at my curiosity the most. What did you hear coming from that? What is that?
Well, if we go back to this year, that has to be the Rotosphere, which has multiple modes, and that is something that we have talked about in the show in the past. But the Rotosphere was a key element for Mike's sound around 2000, 2003, and 2006. So it was a heavily pedaled that it was used around all those tours. But you know what's so interesting, Randy, is just if you go back in time and if you go to this tour, the one that we are covering right now, I always admire the fact that this band is so conscious about the decisions that they make when it comes to the sound. If you compare it within tours, it's like you're listening to three different bands, which is fascinating to me. And for this round, what do we get? We get a lot of like very boxy sounds. They're very bass presence. It's kind of ironic because a combination like this, you think that it's not going to work for a rock band, but actually they make it work, and they make it work extremely okay. I mean, they sound freaking fantastic. And it's something that maybe, and I don't want to trash any other bands or something like that, but like that's something that I respect about Pearl Jam. It's just they always make this conscious decision and effort just to sonically find the way before they go on tour, and it's a very well predefined idea, and it's so easy to separate it within those years and in between those years too, like what were the eras that they were playing.
Yeah, that feels about right. I think you kind of said it, there are three different identities between the binaural tour in 2000, this tour in 2003, and 2006 in Avocado. And like you can kind of tell, like if we were able to, maybe not me, but definitely you, if we're able to give you three different versions of Release on bootleg from those years, I think you'd be able to pick them out of a lineup because they're that different of a sound. And that's kind of incredible that you can do that with one band, because some bands out there, they do kind of get locked in on what they do, what their typical sound is. And that's okay because that's what gravitates people towards them. But I feel like when Pearl Jam continues to push and continues to push, it's noticeable. All right, this section following that up is going to be Even Flow's Save You, and then in the number 4 spot is going to be Help, Help. That is the era, but kind of crazy surprise to see Even Flow directly out of Release. It feels like it has the vibe of 1992 with a mature sound. What do you think about that statement?
I agree. I was gonna say that it feels that it had that spirit of like the first couple of years. If I'm allowed to say this, I think this is where you can listen to the Mike McCready Prime version, if he has a Prime version of itself.
You're
Be,
100% right. It is
be,
2003.
because the stuff that he was doing is just like insane. It's absolutely insane. It's just like I don't know like what was going to his mind at that point, but the creativity, the improvisation, in the way that they were approaching the songs too was great. But if there is something that you need to compare to, like what he plays now, which is still is, and he will be always an outstanding player. But to kind of understand the evolution of his playing, this could be like a good starting point to start to recognize the prime version of himself, especially in songs like Even Flow or Save You. Like there was the one to follow up with that.
Yeah, this version of Even Flow, I didn't think it reached the superhuman levels of 2003 solos that would come later with like Nassau Coliseum and Albany and State College and Buffalo. Like that is Mike at his absolute peak at the end of This Leg in April. It's not quite there yet, but you feel and hear the hints of it. It's very funky at times, like towards the end. It feels like he's kind of doing that. Like that riff that he kind of pulls out a little bit, doing all sorts of stuff that made the sound very vibrant. And you're able to kind of feel that once the solo ended, the band felt something cooking on stage, and they start to take it to another level and rode that lightning bolt till the end of the song. Like that's the wave of momentum that kind of flows very, very nicely at this show. And once you're empowered, like it's not the crowd that just gets empowered, it's the rest of the band that does too. And you ride that wave, and Save You takes you there too. Save You is excellent, absolutely filthy stone solo in the middle there with the crowd clapping along. Very early in the tour, and although they did Australia and Japan in the previous months, you're still trying to figure out what you got here. And I think Save You is one of the Riot Act songs where they know that this is going to be one of those standard first couple songs of the set. They have it here, and it works. It really does energize people, and they can recognize it being an early song. Like, think about it. Not every early set song will have like a call and response kind of thing, like the clapping. And it felt natural for them to do that, even though I'm sure a lot of people in that crowd hadn't seen that song live yet.
Let's pick up your song. Fuck me, I say something you don't wanna hear. Fuck me if you only hear the trouble in your head. Please help me help you. I'm outside. Me, I'm outside. Please want me to. Please let me
It's funny to look back too, because for Save You, like later on in the following tours, it started to become a song that also you can place in so many different parts of the set and it will fit. Like I remember, for example, like the next leg that they did, for example, in 2005 when they visited South America for the first time, they were utilizing Save You a lot as a closer, and
Yeah.
it was just one of those things where you're like, okay, this song is going to work whatever you place it. For me, what it really makes a really good version of Save You is when Ed goes to, now that we're talking about Prime and superhuman mode, when he gets into the superhuman mode of the howling at the end.
Oh yeah.
That's where you get like one of those like oh shit version of Save You, and he gets this at the end, and it's so good.
Oh yeah. Ed is primal scream in this. Just sounds absolutely fantastic. And before Help Help begins, Ed says he's been thinking about this one when he watches the news. There's going to be little nods to things like that in this show. They won't go on a full tangent, but There are little nods to what's happening at the time with the Iraq War for sure. But interesting that fourth song in, you're spiraling into a little darkness, getting into a song that's a bit chaotic and maddening. And it reminds me of kind of like what they do with Deep. I know Deep was the fourth song in Hollywood, but going back to like 1992 era, if you started with Release into Even Flow into Why Go and then Deep, like that would be your quick change of pace kind of song. And in 2003, you would not see that change of pace happen just yet in sets. Like maybe if you turn it around, you would get Given a Fly, then Cropduster, then I Mind, and then Help, something like that, something along those lines. But I love the inclusion here. I think it's so different. They were trying to figure out what this song was. They wouldn't play it a whole lot live, and I guess it's the factor of, new album when you already have 7 on hand and a bunch of B-sides, and it's side B of the record too, so people probably aren't gravitating towards this one as much when they're listening to the record. But if they're just going off of what they can do live with it, boy, does this just make such a good imprint on you. Like, I love when they can get a little bit dark. I love when they can kind of tap into sort of a chaotic character, and it's on point. The whole performance, angry, chaotic, and they let Mike go off at the end.
Now that he says something about like watching the news and thinking about the song, that's how I feel lately too.
Yeah.
Like every single morning that I read the news. But performance, I know, right? But performance-wise, this is one of the rare ones that we didn't get a lot. And for some reason, Randy, sometimes like certain areas of this song reminds me a little bit of Nothing As It Seems, like the darkness that they can bring into it.
I can feel that.
It's a good performance, and I'm going to be very honest with you. It's one of those songs that I haven't heard a lot of versions of it live, but whenever I can find
only
one...
13, my friend.
Well, that's why. But whenever I find one, I will always kind of like stop and really listen to it. And this is one of the better ones that I've heard for sure.
This was the third version played. They'd only play it 10 more times, and a couple of those were outside of the 2003 tour entirely. Like, I am thankful that I got to see this song at PJ20. I know a lot of people got to see this song in Seattle in 2018 when they did the Help tease into Help. So not something that they've gone back to a whole lot, but it's just such a cool song. And if you haven't given it a true run lately, just do it. It's worth your time. Next section here gives us some more Riot Act songs. Given a Fly before Cropduster and I Am Mine. Given a Fly sounds really good, and I think that the crowd kind of needs a more familiar song following Help, which is a dark turn a bit, but I want to get into Cropduster, and I definitely want to get into I Am Mine on this too. Cropduster, again, we're getting into Riot Act songs that we don't talk about a whole lot. We haven't covered the song in a very, very long time, and it really does not get played much anymore. I believe the last time it got played was somewhere in 2016. I can't even remember what show, but it got played once that year. I've only seen it once at my first show in 2008, so not something on my mind. But, you know, when it comes to this song, it is maybe considered to be one of their more forgotten songs along with Help because of that, because they don't go back to it. But also, I don't think it's a fair assessment, because if you listen towards the end of the song when they start really digging into the moon rolling around part, like, this is a band that can pick up steam and pick up energy on that and really find a good groove with it. I always love that part. To build up to that, like, those are the building block moments, but once they start punching and kicking in at the end, like, that to me makes the song.
It's a sleeper for sure. I also have heard it only one time live, and it was a huge surprise for me as well. But I think it's underestimated how good the song is, because it has so many different really cool parts, and the notes that they're using is such a beautiful melodic song, especially what Stone is doing, like all the embellishments that he creates, and to build up all that attack towards the end, that they can make it very, very intense. I think it's a sleeper, and this one as well is also outstanding. It's a really good version.
You know, talk about really good versions of songs, and talk about songs that are being played kind of in their prime. You know, Save You was one of them that we just mentioned, but we're 7 songs into the set. We're already 4 Riot Act songs deep. And I Am Mine, I thought, was absolutely outstanding at this show. Again, it's a bridge moment for I Am Mine where it really starts to rev up and get to that big spot. I feel like Matt was starting to turn loose in this, and it just had such an emotional power punch with very heavy cymbal usage and just a resiliency towards it. And Boom had a really good presence on it too. I Am Mine was a phenomenal moment from this show. And again, it's one of their staples for this tour. They're going to play it almost every single night, if not every night. And they know they have something with it.
One that you can find a really good version on Prime Mic in the back, all the little things that he's doing too. And it's kind of cool, because sometimes he will go through like the more simplistic approach that he's going to just tag along whatever with Ed, because he's the one going to be setting up the tone for the song. But sometimes he will go wild, and all the little things that you can hear in the back makes the song even more beautiful, which is this one that we have right here.
So the next section of songs here, we talked about the beginning releasing to Even Flow kind of feeling like 1992, but these 4 feel like a section straight out of 1995 or 1996. It's Lukin, into Not For You, into Corduroy, into I Got Shit. Like, that's such a good collection of songs right there that really, you got to think, and really it's more than just these songs being together, but like, I was just thinking about it more about why these songs could be together and why they work so well. Like, I was just so impressed by it. But think about how Vitalogy was written and the themes that were in Vitalogy. These 4 songs together have always felt very autobiographical to me. And that's why I think they fit so well here. Because when you think about it, especially for the time period, you know, Lukin is about Ed's privacy and the situations that were happening at that time that made him value privacy so much. And Not For You is also connected to that as well. It's kind of him lashing out on that a little bit and not feeling like he's being left alone. And Corduroy, I think, is the most autobiographical song that Ed has. These 4 songs are all Eddie written songs, so it all makes sense. And for the time, it's pretty cool that there's so many Ed songs together in the set like this. I wonder if that's done on purpose, but like Corduroy obviously fits in with that era of I just want to be left alone. I just want to be a normal human being. Like I'm not this messiah, no fucking messiah that you think I am. And then I got shit can maybe be tied in there because like it's kind of maybe how he feels about some of this. Like even though everybody wants a piece of him, he can still feel a sense of loneliness and a sense of, being stuck. I think they all just fit together so well. And the performances for everything were fantastic too. But I just wanted to bring up that point that these four songs just feel like they were meant to be all in a row like this.
Right. And like you said, you were fitting something that is gonna match the narrative of what you want to share at that moment too. But from the other standpoint, it's something that is also interesting to analyze in between those four songs, especially looking not for you and Corduroy. They were in the key of E. So for them, it's easier to go in that flow and it makes it sound so smooth. And then when you got to I Got ID or I Got Shit, it's in the key of D. And D is part of that family that it makes the triad or the four first notes of a key of E. So it's easier for them just to go along and it sounds so smooth, even though that the message behind it is even more important because what you're trying to transmit with the songs, I bet that it makes it easier for them just to go and continue with the flow because it's going to sound like it's one song separated in three different stories.
Yeah, it's very thematic and almost in the way that Ed would call the Mama-san a mini opera. It can be seen as that too. I really feel that way. What performance from this stood out in this section?
Oh, for me, definitely not for you. Has a really, really good punch. And I love when Stone gets really connected with the part that he gets a little solo in between. And it sounds so good. But for me, definitely the highlight of those is not for you.
It felt like he kind of tapped into that 1995 anger during the song for sure. Like it felt like he had something to get off his chest. I'm torn. I like all four of these performances a lot. I thought Corduroy's solo was massive. It absolutely ripped. And I Got Shit sounds fantastic too. There's a little bit of a flub in the second chorus that sets it back maybe a little bit, but the massive drum bit from Cameron at the end was flawless on this. I just thought that this section just gelled so well together. Even Lucan sounded fantastic. And I know it's not often that we're stuck on Lucan and like dissecting Lucan because if you're talking about Lucan for longer than the song actually is, it better be the best version of Lucan of all time. But
Yeah.
this was good stuff, guys, especially from this era. I'm very surprised that all of these songs kind of gelled together in this. But I'll go kind of backtrack a little bit. Before I Got Shit, we have a fun moment here. Ed says, Mike McCready is looking particularly relaxed tonight. We haven't been on music television much lately, so we hired a fashion consultant to help work on our image. And we told Mike that you got to wear sandals. But there's duct tape on them, so at least the sandals are edgy. And that's what the market is. It's relaxed and edgy, just like Neil Young, who we wrote this next song with, which was I Got Shit. So on to the next section. You Are, Small Town and Insignificance. To me, You Are's the big standout from this section. I thought that this was phenomenal. I mean, I have glowing things to say about all the Riot Act songs in this show, and You Are was maybe one of the best. It's weird, but I'm going to bring something up here. Like almost like the marking of the song where you kind of hear a little bit of that drum machine go off that's like that, that little part?
Yeah, like right before they start.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's like the feedback of the guitar, like when it gets into the drum machine before they start. Yeah,
It reminds me of some kind of like dial tone that you get from a rotary phone.
yeah, it does. It does actually, like the good old school phones when you were like just waiting to dial. Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Either that or like, I don't know, a modem starting up. One of the two.
Yeah, when you were waiting for the internet to kick in. all those weird noises. You Are is like one of the best songs live that they have had since it was created, but You Are around this era is just spot on. Always. I think for me, it's more about like the kind of live setting that you were using. It makes it sound so good because Stone is doing the drum machine, but then Mike is also doing like all those very bluesy riffs that they sound absolutely outstanding what he was running at that time.
You know, most of the times that you hear You Are, it feels like it's like just a chilled out moment, but there was something kind of, and it's tough to say raw because when you have a drum machine, it's not conducive to a raw sound, but it felt heavy. It felt like it had a powerful presence to it, unlike some other versions that are just completely like chilled and grooved. I love those versions too, but this like felt like it had a sense of urgency to it, and I think that's what made this so good here.
Yeah, Stone guitars definitely was a little bit more amped up. I felt that it had a little bit more beef to it, like you said, and I like both sides of the song. We can call them that it has both faces, because I really like when it gets groovy, but like it's always so appreciated when you find stuff like this that it gets like kind of like in your face, more raw.
Keeping me strong, moving along with you. Love is a tower of strength to me. Each stuck in an hour, see it start again.
The performances that follow Small Town was very good. I thought that was jangly, and Ed does something that, you know, he doesn't turn to the back during this, but he gives acknowledgement to the back and says they're their own small town themselves, but just jangly from Stone on this. It gives the song like a good charm, and you have a good sing-along moment with the crowd. The crowd's very good at this show, and maybe you can't like hear them when they aren't responding to something, but when they are responding, they sound phenomenal here. So this is one of the moments where you can really feel them and their presence on Small Town, and Insignificance as well. A very raucous version and a lot of heavy Cameron presence on it. What did you think of those two?
Mad Cameron. That's what I think, especially in Insignificance. And all the jangle that it comes also in a small town is just his ability of just embellish the song with certain things that maybe we not hear all the time coming from him, and they're so subtle, but they really change the dynamics of the song and the way that they're being performed, like opening the hi-hat a little bit more in Small Town, or having a higher presence over the thumbs over like Insignificance, like the little things that he plays, it can make or break a song, and he usually nails everything, but sometimes he goes one step beyond, and I don't know how he does it, but that's why he is the player that who he is. But in this case, that's the highlight for me, Mike Cameron, on both of them.
All right, we're going to get into a three-headed monster to close this out. It's going to go Alive and Porch and then Blood. Like that's, oh boy. Yeah, you want to kick your crowd's ass. You got those three songs in a row, and you've done just that. And Alive is still finding its way a little bit during this time period after taking all of the US leg from 2000 off. They would kind of play it on and off here, but to not put it in the closer's role, they were still not ready to do that. I don't think so. Putting it before Porch is just kind of putting primer on, and I thought that the melody that happens towards the end of the song that Mike is doing here feels like it's just a fresh spin on it, and it flowed so well within the groove of the song. I don't remember a time where he's done something like that to make it sound just so fresh and new. You know, I know that Alive is kind of changing at this point, but this is something that came totally out of left field when listening to this version. You've heard thousands of versions of Alive. Yes, there's only 850 or whatever, but you've heard thousands of versions. So no one expect what's to come, but when you hear something a little different and you can hear kind of like a high-pitched melody that he doesn't usually do, but still like just goes hand in hand with the song so well, it sounded beautiful. I loved that section there.
Yeah, there are some things that sometimes he will do that, like you said, it makes just a song more beautiful. And I think whatever approach that they can take up to this point, Randy, around that time, just to make that song more, I don't want to say meaningful, but just like to make them accept the impact that the song will have later, it's
Mhm.
welcome at this point, because it's still not that Alive that we know now, that celebration that everybody gets at the end, but it's getting there, and you can tell that it's a good version, but still not quite there yet.
Yeah, it's got a ways to go. It'll find its time. I don't know if I can really pinpoint when that moment was from this tour, but it does happen. And you notice it. And then once you go into like 2005 and 2006, it's back in its normal spots closing sets. So, yeah, they just need to get over a hump. And I'm sure stuff like this and keeping it fresh for them definitely helps that. Porch kind of taken charge here by a little bit of a War Pigs reminiscent bass line that Mike starts to get involved with after a while. Jeff does the little doom 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 doom, and Mike kind of picks up on that after a while. But also, I thought it was really interesting that the guitars are just very wailing on this. Both Mike and Stone are coming from both different sides, giving a very similar wail. Not, normal that they would both kind of wail away, but what'd you think?
Yeah, it's cool. It's just a different approach. Just the fact that Stone starts the song for this era, it's kind of weird because like they're both like wailing upon the same note, which is something that they don't do now. But it makes it a little bit less flashy. But it has like, for me, it's like more like rock and roll kind of approach. Like make it a little bit more like intense, not necessarily like flashing out with solos or effects. It's just like a more basic version, but like it's way much more rock and roll in this way, at least for me.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that for sure. And look, everybody just gets so into this version. It feels like Ed is egging this crowd on with the hey chants, and they progressively get louder, and Ed's starting to kind of encourage them to get louder. And yeah, this would have been a cool moment to see the interactions between the band and the crowd. We don't have any video for this show, but yeah, this crowd shows up during this version of Porch, and afterwards Ed acknowledges that and says he'll always remember them being good singers, and I guess he'll be reminded of that this coming Sunday too. But there's actually a little bit of a story here. So after Porch, Ed apparently takes a real nasty spill over the monitors, takes a nasty fall, and then after a little while, it sounds like they were going to go into another song, and Ed's like, no, let's do this. Five Horizon says, It sounded like they could have done daughter and did blood instead. But afterwards, after a little deliberation, Ed says, Mike has sandals because he kind of hurt his toe and he thinks he broke his too. So yeah, that might be a result of his little spill there. But Blood enters the chat and closes the main set here. It felt like, compared with Alive and Porch, which felt like showstoppers, that Blood almost didn't get a chance to like stand out. It was real quick. It was less than 3 minutes long and just kind of in and out and done. And I thought that maybe there was a missed opportunity to expand upon that and really turn it into a chaotic version.
Yeah, it feels too quick. It feels that we didn't have enough time just to appreciate it. And it could be one of the good ones too, because around this time there's no limitations when it comes to vocally Ed can do. And yeah, it felt too quick. I was going to quote Batman when he gets like stabbed when they say like something about the knife, but I can't remember the quote now. So but yeah, it feels quick. Yeah.
Well, one thing that isn't quick is our encore section where we talk about Patreon. So let's take a long time to pause for station identification and do that. And the reason why it might take a little longer is because we have a lot of people to thank that have joined up or who have increased their donations through Patreon, thanks to the tour and thanks to the reaction episodes. So there's a lot of people to thank. I want to start thanking them all right now. Let's thank new member of the Horizon Leg tier, John Cowling. Thanks, John. Let's thank new member of the Horizon Leg tier, Jonathan Simon. Thanks, Jonathan. Thank the last ever member of the bonus leg tier who joined up before bonus leg went away, Tethoscope. Yes, Tethoscope is the last ever bonus leg tier member, so thank you, Tethoscope. Let's thank Frederick Goldberg for editing their membership up to the Gigaleg tier. Thank you so much, Frederick. Let's thank Bob for becoming the first ever Luke and Leg member, the $3 tier that we'll talk about in a second. Thank you, Bob. Reagan Rector joining up on Luke and tier. Thank you, Reagan. Reese Wegman for joining up on Luke, and thanks, Reese. Thank you to Matt Taub joining up for the yearly membership on Lucan, and Stephen Litton for joining up on Lucan as well. Big thank you goes out to David Lang, who joined up on, and the Australian exchange rate might be tough to tell, but I think that's the Gigaleg tier for $5 tier, but it's a different price in Australia. So thank you, David, for doing that and joining up on that. Thank you to Kyle Nigerian for joining up on the Gigaleg tier. Thank you to Michael Hack for joining up on the Horizon Leg tier. That's a lot of people to thank, and we appreciate everybody who has been supporting us for all this time. And guys, like, this is the time to do so. Even if we're past time of the show is happening, you can go back on Patreon and listen to all those reaction episodes that we have out right now. I'm sure at this time, we had 2 episodes out today. We have this episode that got released, and we had the Nashville Night 1 reaction episode that's out. So if you want to check that out, if you went to the show and you're like, I want to see what they had to say about this, I'm sure it's going to be great, because I know we have great people that are going to be on hand for that. And also, don't forget that you could be part of those reaction episodes if you go and find the crew, which means Javier and Aaron and Alex, and I'm sure a whole mess of others out on site when the show is happening. And I think that I'm going to take a stab at that. They'll be outside of the arena somewhere near where the merch tent is, if it's the same spot as it was in 2022. That was where we did the last one that year. So I'm going to say that there's a lot of traffic around there, that would be a pretty good spot. So definitely look out for them, look out for the flag, and that can draw your attention, and give your thoughts on the show. We want to hear from as many people as possible, as many thoughts and excitement after the show. So get yourself involved. We would love to have you. And it's not just for Nashville, it's for the rest. For Raleigh, it's for Pittsburgh, it's for everything. So if you are interested in listening to any of those episodes that are out, then join up on Patreon. You can do it for as low as $3 a month. with the Lucan leg, or you can join up on the Giga leg tier for $5 a month, and you'd be able to get an episode request of your choosing that we will do on a future episode of this podcast. Or you can join up on the Horizon leg tier, which will also get you an episode. It will get you a profile. And we have a bunch of new Horizon leg tier members. So we're going to hopefully get a lot of profiles coming and a lot of new content coming from them. And we're going to think about retooling the Horizon leg tier to definitely give a little bit more to the people who have been donating towards it because they deserve it. So keep that in mind. And to join up, all you got to do is go to patreon.com/live on four legs, or you go to the Patreon app and search for Live on Four Legs, or you can just do it by going to liveonfourlegs.com and clicking the Become a Patron button. And that gets you in, that gets you all the content, including a little show that we did from Third Man Records in 2016. That is now available for you guys. And I love that episode because there was just such cool things to talk about. You know, you don't usually get this experience where they're recording for a live show on vinyl as it's happening, and they're playing towards, 200 or 300 people. And that was such a cool show to do. Such great performances from that.
Yeah, for sure. And so many people to thank. Like, wow, thank you so much to everyone joining in. And yeah, and find us, find the flag, find me. Probably you're gonna see people with t-shirts from the podcast, and we'll try to post as much as we can the day of the show. Maybe a little bit of a live streaming, just showing where we're gonna be for the post-show episode, because we want to hear what you think. Like, maybe it's gonna be your first time show ever. Maybe it's gonna be your 125th. We don't know, but we care. And we want to know, like, what was your experience and what were your thoughts about the show? So it's important to us. So we want to try to gather as many people as we can.
Hey, every show matters. I say it to people all the time that just go to their first show in 2025. Like, that's cool. I want to hear that story just as much as the person that got to be on the rail and got to sip Eddie's wine and got to get all the mic picks and stuff like that. And that's something, by the way, I didn't mention, but did I show you that I got all the mic picks?
Yes, I might be a little jealous.
I had MIK, and then I had an extra I, and thankfully somebody was able to trade me the E. And I want to be able to do something cool with them. Maybe I'll like set it up in, the poster frame that I can put them somewhere in that. But yeah, it was cool. I've never gotten loot like that from a show before, so that was kind of exciting. But anyway, enough about me, I suppose. All about you guys and all about sharing your show experiences. So to do that is all about Patreon, and it helps us when it comes to going out on tour and helping pay for stuff on tour and helping, just putting us out there and funding this podcast, because this podcast needs funding just like any other production out there. We don't take any commercials. We don't believe in it. So yeah, that could be easy money for us, but we don't believe in doing that. So we don't. We easily could make money off of blue pills or whatever, or, food delivery services. But you know what? We don't, because we feel like you guys need to listen to the music instead. So that's where I'll stop talking, and hopefully you'll be able to meet us up on tour. And we got stickers, guys. Remember that we got stickers. And if you're listening and you just joined up on Patreon, I would be happy to send you a couple of tour stickers. So just get in touch at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com, and I'll send you some stickers when the time comes. So yeah, anyway, let's talk more rock. Back to the rock. All right, so not much being said before getting into the first song in the encore here, which happens to be Gimme Some Truth, and that goes into Love Boat Captain. And man, this is the first time on the leg that they played it. They only played it 4 other times to this point, and all of the 2001 shows, the Bridge School shows, and the Groundwork Benefit show, they played it. And it was one of those songs where I know Ed was keen on playing it for the Tribute to Heroes show after 9/11, but Neil Young convinced him out of that, which was probably a smart idea. But boy, is there any other song that can define how angry they were during this time.
I'm sick of death, operating things from tight-lipped, short-little mama's little chauvinists. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. I've had enough of watching the scene from eager centers and the paranoid prima donnas. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. No short-head, belly son of Georgie Porgy's gonna mother of us up. So we were just a pocket full of money for oil. No love for oil.
You just feel it in Ed's voice when he's like singing about, no short-haired yellow belt, like he's screaming it, he's intense about it, and you know that he's been like stewing with these thoughts and like this anger of what's going on in our world, and this is his way of getting it out and just absolutely ripping into it. And I thought that there was so much good intensity. It's almost like when he's singing these choruses that the whole entire front row are nothing but politicians and lobbyists, that he's singing directly to them. That's how intense it got in this.
I want to tell you a fun story about me 20 years ago now, or even more than that. But when I heard this version in the Live at the Garden DVD, it became one of the staples that like how I wanted to play and in the way that I wanted to play it, because this song reflects so much intensity, even though that is a slow song. But for me, that was like the go-to when I was finding what I wanted to be as a guitar player. And I was obsessed with this. I was just like, my family probably was going nuts because it was blasting all volume at all times and me playing in the back trying to figure it out. But for me, when I heard this cover, it was just like, how a song like this, that is not super fast, that is not like super loud or anything like that, can bring up so much intensity and can express so much meaning. It was just everything. And I wanted to be that. I wanted to play like that. So that's something that you maybe didn't know that happened a few years ago.
Yeah, no, I did not know that this was an influential song on your playing style, but that's pretty awesome because, yeah, it's not a song you'd expect. I mean, they went back to it twice last year. I actually got to hear it at the Garden and never, ever would have expected that this song would pop up. I mean, we got So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star in Florida, too. Two covers in the last 2 years. I just did not think I'd ever get to see and be possible, but here we are, and this song is making a whole lot of sense again, and it's kind of sad, but from an intensity standpoint, it's exactly the mood that you want to set the tone for in this encore. And then the mood kind of transitions and changes when you jump into Love Boat Captain a little bit, but it's needed here, and it kind of shows that they are really good at doing that. Like, they can change the mood kind of at the drop of a hat. And Love Boat Captain was, again, very powerful. And when you think of Love Boat Captain in 2003, you don't necessarily think of it being an encore song. And they're still maneuvering things around, like Help Help being the fourth song in the set. But it certainly works, and I think it gets people kind of juiced up at this moment, and following Give Me Some Truth, it kind of brings some levity to the situation.
Wild theory. Love Boat Captain is going to be one of the openers for Nashville 1 or Nashville 2.
Well, I would say that's a really cool thought if they didn't play it in Jazz Fest.
True, but I don't know. I feel that it might be right for the moment. It might be right for the venue.
It's been so long since they opened with it. I wish. It's such a great, perfect opener, but I don't know. I think that might be wishful thinking. But I'm hoping for you, and I'm hoping for everybody else that goes to Nashville that it happens. But
yeah, that'll be cool. That'll be super cool. But I don't know. Something made me feel that it could be the right time for that.
All right, let's move along with the encore here. We have Better Man and Glorified G. I didn't expect this coming out of this version of Better Man, but this is a full save it for later tag here. And now that we know the save it for later tag to kind of come around more often and be the full tag because of the solo Eddie version that came out last year with the bear, it's interesting to kind of go back and see where it started, which was around this era. I think a lot of people will say that State College is the one that really stands out, where they did the 2 dozen other Dirty Lovers line. Like, I remember it from that State College show specifically, but also I think like this could be one of those early instances where they were starting to pull up those full lyrics on it, and I can't get enough of that. I think that that version of Save It for Later that Ed does is one of the best things that Ed has ever done solo outside of Running Out of Sand, which is one of my absolute favorites. But I love whenever it comes up, and I don't think it should go back to the just don't run away type versions. Night 2 in Florida, I made sure that Mara and I were singing that line, and, let me come to a decision on it. I wanted to just sing that so bad, so I was kind of singing it over the ending jam, but you need that now that it's become what it's become. You need that instead of just doing the don't runaways and oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it will be kind of like an RVM without that trippy part or whatever they do in the middle. I feel that now it's needed for what like B-Man has become over time. And especially because people right now, The Bear has been such a popular show that people can relate to it, and they can relate the song, even though they might not know the history of the band with the song or Eddie with the song. Now they can associate that. So I totally agree with you. You need that tag from now on. You just can't skip it.
A friend of mine who doesn't really know anything about Pearl Jam but watches The Bear, he heard the song, heard the version of the song, read a little bit about it, and I told him, I'm like, hey, did you listen for the ending where he does the Can't Find a Better Man? And he's like, oh, I read all about like what they do with the song. I think that's like the coolest thing. And he's not somebody that's ever going to sit there and listen to Pearl Jam. I know that because if he would have, I would have convinced him by now, but that's still something that people can get excited about. And because it has an attachment to something he's already a fan of, then it just puts it in the forefront. And it's funny, my 2 favorite Eddie solo songs, obviously this being a cover, were both used for TV shows, with Running Out of Sand being on the Twin Peaks remake too. So yeah, it's good stuff here. Glorified G, Ed says, we did it the other night, so let's try it again. And it's the 3rd time that they played this since inviting it back into the sets for the first time since 1996. They played it a handful of times this year, about 14. Surprisingly, it was one of the only songs left off of the Mansfield trilogy. That's a piece of trivia. That and Last Exit, I'm just like, why? You had to play covers instead of those. You couldn't play those, and that always bugged me. But there's this little cymbal flare that Matt has during it that I couldn't get over because I felt like other versions of Glorified G don't have that little bit. So I'm like, listen, I'm like, oh, I don't know this is a cymbal flare. It reminds me a little bit of like that little like during WMA, like that part. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah. And well, you know what we need after mentioning that?
What?
We need
Was
the
there
filthy
one
kill.
in this?
No, but technically so good that it deserves to be filthy. So I propose a filthy fill on this.
For the little cymbal chink?
No, not needed. Okay, fine. We can move on. No filthy fill.
I think we can do better, my friend.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I get too excited about the filthy fills. I like them.
I know you do. But look, there's a time and place for everything. You get the right time, you get the right place, and then everything will come and be magic. You can't just force these things, sir.
Okay.
I know you're new here, but you can't just force these things.
I need to make myself a t-shirt to force the filthy fills.
We'll do like a cavern silhouette and just write
Yeah.
Phil on it.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
If you would like to buy that shirt, then send us your money. We would like to accept it. All right. Quick goofing around here. The last two songs of Encore number 1 are Do the Evolution and Rearview Mirror. And during Do the Evolution, my favorite thing happens. The 2003 April Leg Evolution Yips are here.
I'm a piece, I'm a man. I'm buying stocks on the day of the crash. I crawled a year, but now I'm high. I'm 2010, I fuck it up every time. It's earth behavior.
For some reason, if you don't know the story, in 2003, on this leg, Ed always botched where the 2010 Watch It Go to Fire line is. And he usually does it in the second verse. Instead of the On the Loose, I'm a Truck, all the rolling hills I flatten them out, he'll do the 2010 Watch It Go to Fire and always afterwards realize that he fucked that up and be like, I fucked up the song again. He'll say something like that. And he does it multiple times on this tour. The same way that golfers will get the yips when they putt, that they'll just start shaking. It's the same thing. We did the Do the Evolution episode a while back, and I made sure that that was a massive part of that because it's a story. So that's not the only story that goes along with this version, because while that can be considered a flub there's also a lyric change that isn't a flub. During this, Five Horizons has said that he's wearing a shirt that reads, "What would Jesus bomb?" And there are a couple lyric changes that kind of go along with that. He does the "I bomb what I want irresponsibly," and then also in the middle of the song somewhere he says, "What would Jesus bomb?" He does that somewhere. So again, more shots at the Iraq War, kind of in the same vein as Give Me Some Truth, and it's a very political climate and time where he's going to be using his voice, and evolution is just kind of a part of it.
So many things that we can change the lyrics into the song right now too,
Yeah.
so many things that we can alter it, but
2025, Watch It Go to Fire.
I know he's a thief, he's a liar. Well, anyways, I didn't know the story about like the EPs. I didn't know that. I always knew that he was kind of like forgetting lyrics around this time, but I didn't know that it was a thing specifically for that line. So that's news to me too.
The Evolution Yips. The Evolution Yips. Historic moment in Pearl Jam time for sure. But you're going to finish off this set with an outstanding version of Rearview Mirror. It's an experimental version. It's spacey. There's tons of EBO, and I think it sounds like maybe Stone is using EBO outside of Ed using EBO. It feels like Stone's using a little bit, and Mike's also making these like very precise spacey effects that it almost feels like he's using a bow on that. I know he's not, but in the same vein of like trying to really kind of like retch the strings, and maybe it's just like him just slicing the pick or something like that, but he's making these real sharp sounding spacey effects that sound really cool. What's your take on all the sonic creaminess that comes from this version?
Oh, I like that term, sonic creaminess.
Put that on a shirt too. Give me your money.
Go to liveon4legs.com if you want it. But there's so many things happening, and my favorite thing about everything that is going on is the simplicity to it, because it's super heavy on effects. Yes, there's like Ed on the EBO. Stone is, I think you're right, I think he's using an EBO or some sort of a slide, and Mike is going with the pick up and down, using delay, there's a flanger here and there. There's like the slow mode for the rotosphere that he used to use around that time. The slow mode sounds a little bit more like a jet plane, and the fast mode is like the one that he will use in solos, like a little bit more present, like right in your face. But they go from major to minor, minor to major. But even though they're for the guys out there that play any instrument, you're going to be like, oh, well, that's simple. It fits right. And within all that chaos, you can get like a very narrow, like pathway that you can focus that chaos and you can make it sound really, really good. And around this time, they were doing that a lot, and it works. And also, like, if you notice, it's just about the players itself, like Jeff, Stone, Mike, and Ed. But Matt is a little bit more subtle in the back. He's not that, like, in your face in other versions like we have had lately. It's a beautiful chaos. I think that's what I'm trying to say with this.
Yeah, and that dynamic, it feels like a massive team effort. Like everybody is just kind of riding off of the wave. And once you kind of bring it to that boiling point and start that bass line, it really just rips into the end and has a very, very strong ending. I call the arena rock ending, where they can hold out that last chord and strum it out for as long as possible and really kind of soak in the moment. That was this version of River Mirror. Just excellent in every facet here. Encore 2, Ed invites Slater-Kinney out to end the night. The crowd was cheering. This is just an observation, but the crowd was cheering at first. And then once he introduced Slater-Kinney to the stage, they stopped cheering. Just an observation, nothing against Slater-Kinney, because I do really like Slater-Kinney, but I don't know if the crowd liked them as much as maybe other crowds did. But Ed says, if I could say anything right now, it's educate yourself. Educate yourself, educate yourself, educate yourself. Whatever your opinion is, it's important to have one. And I love this line. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I see that a lot these days. The final two songs of this show are going to be Fortunate Son and Rockin' in the Free World. And I really love the back and forth between Ed and Corin on Fortunate Son. I'm very picky about my Slater-Kinney moments, as I'm sure many of you have heard on this podcast. The leaving here with Slater-Kinney, not my favorites. Harvest Moon with Slater-Kinney, not my favorite. I don't think it really is their wheelhouse. It's just my thing. But when Corin can kind of do something on her own without the other band members and really let her voice fly, she sounds terrific. And Fortunate Son, I thought, was just stupendous.
Some folks are born made to wear the flag, born in red, white, and blue. And when they play hail to the chief, oh, they point the cannon at you. It ain't me, I'm no fortunate one. And me, I'm no fortunate son.
And they will make it a good fit. Like sometimes, like you were saying, collabs can be overwhelming, or sometimes they're just not going to fit the spirit of the song, but it works. And the voice ping pong that they were doing, it's just so cool. And it's a song that it needs that. You need that female voice just to make it shine a little bit more, and it works. It works perfectly fine for me.
Yeah, and she continues on. They stay out for Rockin' in the Free World. And she usually does the second verse on Rockin' in the Free World. And you can hear her flutter when she gets really, really into it. And that's when that song just really sounds fantastic. It is the big party part of the set, closing out your night. And Fortunate Son, of course, is a statement song for this era. They haven't really played it outside this era too much, but just a real lot of fun. The band is electric, and it feels like they are just enjoying the moment here. And honestly, it closes out a pretty damn good show that doesn't get talked about anywhere close to enough.
Always so interesting to go back and listen to the shows that I personally never listened to before, and so many things to discover. And this tour is so rich on that. It's like there's so many dates, there's so many sleeper shows out there that like people need to know, and I feel this is one of them. I don't want to call them like one of those sleepers per se, but it's a really good one, and I really enjoy listening to it.
We'll see where this one stands in the ratings here, but before we get to that, let's do a little bit of a top 3 favorite moments. What do you say?
Shall we? Okay, let's do this. You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
You know what? I'll go first on this one because I think I'm ready for it. As I
Okay.
kind of teed up before, I think I'm going nothing but Riot Act here. That's how I'm feeling about this show. And honestly, I can go in any direction. I think they all are deserving of number 1, but I'm going to say my number 3 is probably going to be I Am Mine. My number 2 is going to be Help Help, and my number 1 from this show is You Are. I thought it was just a spectacular version of You Are here.
Wow, we're similar, but
Okay.
a little different. But my number 3 is going to be You Are. My number 2 is going to be Cropduster,
Oh, okay. Going a different Riot Act direction.
and my number 1 is going to be Save You. The like
Wow.
the vocals at the end.
Nothing but Riot Act from the both of
Hmm.
us. And that's crazy because there are versions of these songs. Alive could have made my list. Give Me Some Truth could have made my list. Rearview Mirror could have made my list. Even Fortunate Son maybe deserves a little bit of an honorable mention. But wow, to get all of our picks be Riot Act songs, that's impressive. But hey, we don't get to hear some of these songs too often. You know what I mean? So I think it's the excitement that gravitates us towards them. After that being said, I think we can give this one a rating. I'm actually going to go pretty high on it. I felt like this was fresh to me. And when you're doing shows from locations, like sometimes like Raleigh, I'm not thinking about, oh, like all the great Raleigh shows because there haven't been Raleigh shows. So I wanted to put together 2003 because we haven't done one this year, I don't think. So Raleigh worked in this situation, and I didn't know what to expect. I know that I usually gravitate towards some more of the June, July shows from this era than I do the April. I feel like the late April ones are where it starts to really turn up. But I was super impressed by this show. I thought all the Riot Act songs were terrific, as previously mentioned, but it had a good flow to it. There wasn't a lot of talking, there wasn't a lot of story involved, but that's okay. I think it kind of fit what they were going for. There was still a lot of good crowd interaction. So I am firmly at a 9 for this show. I thought this was really well done.
Well, I'm going to make it very easy too, because you said something that for me it meant the same, refreshing. I don't hear a lot of this kind of song live in like my regular mix, if I will have to say it. But I'm there with you. It's a 9. It's a good show. It's something that I don't know if it's maybe underestimated because it's not, Raleigh doesn't have like a rich history when it comes to the connection with the band, but something worth the listen for sure. Maybe something that you can listen to into your drive if you're going to Nashville shows this week, you know?
I would definitely encourage it. It is on the platforms. If you subscribe to Apple Music or Spotify or any of those, all the 2003 bootlegs are on there. So you can go and listen to this, and highly recommended, especially, I mean, you're at the end of the episode. I hope that you actually listened to the show before you did the episode, because that's how it works. That's the companion aspect to it. So yeah, happy to do this one. And it was nice to have 2 weeks before needing to do it too. So I think that had a little bit of something to do with the refreshing aspect. But we're back on the horse for next week as we get to our final destination on this tour. which happens to be Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A couple of years ago, we went really heavy on Pittsburgh, and we did like 3 Pittsburgh shows in 1 year. But there's still a lot of Pittsburgh shows that we have to do in their history there, and there's been a lot of fantastic shows. So this one that we're doing, actually decided by our patron Nicholas, that wants us to cover the 2006 Pittsburgh show. So that is exactly what we'll be doing. I've listened to bits and pieces of it before, and it sounded phenomenal. I think those avocado songs are going to come into play kind of in the same way that the Riot Act songs came into play on this one. So get ready for that, and we'll be there next week. And then after that, look, we'll start gathering some tour stuff and some conversation for when bootlegs come out and stuff like that. So just be on the lookout for all of that. Thank you all for listening in today. And if this is your first time listening in, welcome. And hopefully we have made a good impact on you. What we do here is we preserve people's memories. We preserve these shows and talk about the stories from these shows because, hey, 2003 was a long time ago, and you might forget in another 20 years. But if somebody stumbles along this episode and they were at this show and they can get rekindled with some memories, then I am more than happy, and Javi is more than happy to reunite you with those. So yes, that's what we do here. And if you like what we do, then make sure that you are subscribed on your favorite podcast provider, whether it be Apple or somewhere else, YouTube, anywhere. I wouldn't go to Spotify, but that's just me. If you want to take that chance, you're more than free. But make sure that you are subscribed. And if you are subscribed somewhere, then also make sure if there is a way that you can rate this podcast. Feel like we need the 5 stars, then please feel free to give us the 5 stars. That helps out a real lot. We'd be really appreciative of that. Also, if you can comment and tell people what you think about this show and give them a little bit of insight, then that will be super, super helpful as well. Hey, hope I get to see you all at Raleigh on next Tuesday. And I'll be around. I'll be in GA. Come find me. We'll hang out. We'll have a good time. That's what it's all about right now. So, yeah, lots of good stuff coming up on the pike and just preparing for all of it. So, let's close this one on out. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you already, miss you always. All right, back on the road. And some cool things up on the horizon, as mentioned. And you guys will know about it as soon as we know about it. So until next week, we will see you on the pod.
See you in Nashville.